Hello everyone and welcome to a new video on my channel. I'm Adam and today we are starting but kind of continuing the series which I started last week, where we're going through a retrospective of each series of Beast Quest. I started with what I believe is the best series, and then in that video I said that I'd be going numerically from series 1 up to the current series that we're at, which by the time I catch up will probably be series 32. But I don't know yet. Depends how quickly I go through this, because series 32 will not be completely released until September. So I do have a chance. Just 10 months. Yeah, 10 months to go through 31 seasons. Bring it on. So obviously we're going to can I talk? We're going to start with series 1, where it all began, and the beasts that are introduced in this series are Furno the Fire Dragon, Sepron the Sea Serpent, Arxa the Mountain Giant, Tagus the Horseman, Nanook the Snow Monster, and Epos the Flame Bird. Now, with these books, my opinions on them are different from each other, which is to be expected because there's 6 of them. Surely you're going to like one more than the other, like everyone else. But this is a retrospective video, so my goal for this video and for every other retrospective video is to point out the positives of this series and what I like about it, and just not mention the negatives, just talk about all I like about it, just to kind of prove a point that every series has the high points which makes it a great series, or a good one at least. So let's start this. With series 1, obviously we're introduced to the 6 beasts of Avantia. They're all good beasts and they're all caught in an enchantment in some way. For Furno, it's a collar around his neck, same with Sepron. For Arcta, it's a blindfold. For Tagus, it's a horseshoe. Nanook, it's a bell around her neck. And Epos, I believe it's a couple of... No, it's not her feathers. It's a ring around her talon. To start off, highlights is that it introduces us to the world of Avantia. It introduces characters that we all know and like, being Tom, Alina, Storm, Silver, the Adaro the Wizard, King Hugo, and even Tom's uncle at one point. It also introduces us to the main antagonist, being Malvel, who establishes himself as a threat without even seeing him until book 6. And then when we see him in book 6, we realize that, hey, this guy is a threat. But not a well-established one. It's more like you just possess these beasts, send him to do his bidding, and call it that. These beasts are not protecting anything in any way. They're just destroying or harming the landscape to kind of throw them off, I guess. Like, no, not throw them off. Harm the whole trading industry in that kind of format. What I'm trying to say is block up a river so farmland can't grow because of the lack of rivers. Cause tidal waves so fishing can't happen. Rock slides so goods from the mountains can't leave the mountains. And stuff like that. That's what I'm trying to say. Harm the livestock. Yeah. Basically put the kingdom in ruins. And that is where Tom comes in. He established himself as just a young farm boy wanting big things, wanting to go out on adventures, but never really getting the opportunity. And then the opportunity arises and he takes off. He then gets to King Hugo's palace. Dialogue ensues. And then we go into the quest, which then we get introduced to Alina, Storm, and Silver. Not in that order. It's Storm, then Alina, then Silver. No, it's Storm, Silver, then Alina. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is all this happens in one book, the Inferno. Then it goes into the introduction of this beast, which, by the way, is the traditional design you'd think for a beast, especially a dragon. Like, this is what I think of when someone says a dragon, I think of Furno. But to add on to that, you got the stereotypical aspects you think of a dragon, but it's executed very well. And that's what I do like about Furno. Expected, but well done. Moving on to Sepron, we do have a bit of a obstacle in the way beforehand, being a giant fire in a seaside town. But then we go into the water battles, which is an aspect which we brought up multiple times throughout the series. Being the original water battle, just like Furno was the original aerial battle, but that was quick, so I don't know if I should count that. But being the original water battle, it establishes how dangerous water battles are for Tom, and not being able to breathe underwater, that's another thing. So that's already like, okay, this is getting interesting. We're getting into the adventure. We're at the midpoint now where things can reach the climax. And then we go to Arcta, which this one actually has Tom in a fight go into a very dangerous scenario to the point where he could have died, but so could the beast. Which he did prevail, obviously, because he's 31 seasons later and he's still not dead. What I'm trying to say is this fight does have the great stake sport to it, which I think is what makes people like Arcta. Just like Sepron and Furno, they also have great stakes. So Furno brings up the aerial battles, Sepron brings up this underwater battles, Arcta the rocky terrain battles and dangerous heights. Then we go to Tagus, which brings out the durability of the beasts in these battles. Tagus is not the most durable beast, so I'll ignore that. But this battle shows the durability of Tom and Storm. Being able to withstand being dragged along the plains, but also Storm being able to keep up is quite astounding, to be honest. Not to mention, this whole quest thing has to be a secret, so Tom can't tell people. And that led him to actually get imprisoned in this book, in which he breaks out. But this does show the consequence for having to keep this big of a secret where you can't actually tell people what you're doing. And people won't believe you, even if you're lying or telling the truth, because beasts stay hidden, so they don't actually know about the beast's existence, they just hear legends about it. But I think this, with Tagus, it was executed very well. So, to sum it up, so far, it's a good series. It's a great series. Opens the world of Avanti. It introduces different terrains, different designed beasts that all look interesting in their own way, and have a fight which tests a different part of Tom's capabilities to show us as a reader how great of a hero he is, with his companions, which everyone likes, which I like as well, so don't worry. Just shows that these guys are a great team. They do great things, and throughout the series, they do have their own moment in the spotlight. In Tagus' fight, Storm had his moment. Going on to Nanook the Snow Monster, ignore my opinion on her, we know what it is. This one actually does test the endurance to the cold. So, like with Tagus, it tests Tom's endurance, but instead of keeping up, it's a case of standing tall or firm. And that's something that I do appreciate regarding Nanook. Yeah, that's the first. The entire book is in the icy plain, so blizzards ahoy, and testing the endurance level of withstanding the cold. I hate the cold, just like I hate the heat. So, yeah, I'm in the right place here. But what I'm trying to say is that having the fights test Tom in different ways, more than just a straight up beast, I think is incredible. So going to the polar opposite of the cold to the heat, we have Epos. So, like I said, with Nanook, test the endurance, but instead of cold, it's heat. Heat is an enemy and does prove to be an obstacle, just like the cold can be. It can cause you to not think things through properly. And as for what my job is, I do work in the kitchen. If things get too heated, you and you get too hot, you do tend to lose concentration on what you're doing, and you do sometimes not think things through properly. The amount of times I burnt my hand is incredible. There was one time I put a pan in an oven, and then a couple of minutes later I had to take it out, part of the cooking process, but I forgot that the pan was in the oven. So I grabbed this metal pan with my bare hand, and obviously it hurt. Luckily, I didn't drop it. But the annoying thing is, though, I had a towel in my other hand. So what I was meant to use to grab the pan was in my right hand when I burnt my left hand, which didn't have a towel. I find it hilarious personally, because looking back at the mistakes you do, you sometimes you find it hilarious. So yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, in the heat of the situation, you tend to not think things through properly, like I did. But this is actually something that could be established with all the fights in this series. Is in the heat of the moment where Tom needs to act fast to save people, save himself, but also save the beasts. And I think in this series it's executed perfectly. With a rather simple series that's quite down to earth, you have these 6 books having a fight which is different in all different sort of ways, where they can test Tom's endurance, or yeah, they test Tom's endurance in different ways, whether it's underwater, up in the sky, up in the mountains, being dragged along the plains, keeping up with the beast, withstanding cold, withstanding heat. These beasts have terrains which normal people won't be able to do so well in, except for maybe the plains. But even then, that's still going to be a challenge. In Epos, though, Malvel gets introduced, the big bad of this villain, this series. This villain is what I believe, and what so many other people believe, to be the best villain of this series. And apart from just being the original, he is an imposing threat which comes back time and time again, to the point where, yeah, we can be sick of him, but as far as I'm aware, he's not coming back anytime soon. But I'm not going to say he's dead, because the amount of times I've said that, I'd be wrong. I've just given up at trying to assume he's dead at this point. But I think it's a great idea to mention him and build up his intimidation factor throughout the start of the series, throughout this entire series, and then introduce him as exactly what is described in the finale, to where he seemingly killed, only for it to be hinted at the end where he's suspected to actually be alive. But he doesn't really play a major role, just corrupts the beasts, and that's it. What I need to say is, though, this is a simple, down-to-earth series, I would say. Relatively easy to read, with, in my opinion, little to no problems. I do have my problems with this series. Yeah, I do have my problem with this series, but that's not what this video is about. What I will be doing for this series, though, I will be re-ranking these beasts because my ranking opinion has changed since 2018 when I recorded this the first time. So I think it's only fair if I re-rank them again. And looking at the order, I am happy with that. So I will re-rank this series. I've done my retrospective on it. I've evaluated what I like the most about the series, what it does, and why it's important to this series. Being honest, Beast Quest would not be Beast Quest without this series, without any of the beasts here. And considering how much I like one beast, very not muchly at all, it is, I would argue that my least favorite beast of this series is still just as important as my favorite beast of this series. So with that, I will get into the ranking, and then I'll be ending it here for the Series 2 retrospective, which I'll be doing shortly after this. Any last things I want to say? Not really, because it's a simple series which opens up the world of Avantia, introduces the reader to the main characters, and establishes what this series is going to bring. And with that, I need to say, whilst it's not everyone's favourite, it's still one which people need to appreciate for being what it is. And for me, this is the one where it all began. And in the Beast Quest community, Series 1 is referred to as where it all began, because it is. You got so much that comes after this, which can be better than it, can be worse than it, but everything in the future with Beast Quest stems back to these 6 books. And I think this series has set the standard for the average of what Beast Quest can do. So with that, that's how I'm going to end that discussion. As for the updated ranking, we have my least favourite still being the same, being Nanook the Snow Monster. Now, the highlights I have said being the whole testing the cold endurance, her being actually an important beast in the aspects. But ultimately, though, to me, she just doesn't sit well. And that's just a personal opinion. 5th is Arcs of the Mountain Giant. Same thing with Nanook, but I only have a sight more liking to him because of future appearances in this series. Up next, we have Tagus the Horseman. Now, this one was my favourite of the series and went down. Reason being, we had Centaur Beasts in the future, and they all one-upped Tagus to the point where nostalgia can't help. Following up, we have Sepron the Sea Serpent. I do appreciate this beast, and with what Jack Griffin has mentioned of this beast, my liking for him has gone up, so thank you, Jack. Now, these top 2, I generally can't decide. I like both of these beasts to the point where I'd actually be happy to have either of them be my favourite of the series. But whilst I do have a phoenix and a dragon tattooed to my arm, it's hard to decide. I think I'm gonna have to go with my favourite of this series being Epos. So Furno is the second favourite, still. And it's not even because of a bad thing. He set the standard for what beasts need to be. And whilst the other beast of this series hasn't really beaten that standard, including Epos, it's still a good mark to start off on. And my only negative of him is that the fight was only 1 chapter. But other than that, he's a perfect beast. And then we have Epos being my favourite of this series. I like Phoenixes, so ignore that. But I feel like this beast is such an imposing threat throughout the entire story, where she appears at the start of the series at a book, attacks Tom, flies off, comes back later, attacks Tom again, flies back, comes back later, so on and so forth. I think it's incredible. So, seeing that this beast appears throughout the entire book rather than just the end like the others, I think is a good aspect. Another thing I've thought of I was talking about this series while I was doing the ranking is that each of these beasts actually give Tom a token after he frees them. Each token helps in a certain aspect, which can increase Tom's endurance or make it easier to defeat beasts. They don't really help defeat beasts, but they do help in a way where it's more like, hey, this hero has this ability or these abilities. So yeah, at the end of the day, Tom's just a child. So, so Phono's token he gave to Tom was the fire scale, which is placed on the shield. These are all shield tokens, by the way, which increases the shield's resistance to fire to the point where it can kind of propel fire. Not immune, no, need to point that out. Sepron's token was Serpent Tooth, which helps Tom endure rushing waters. Arctus' token is a feather, which, held above his head like a hang glider, can protect him from falling from high heights. The horseshoe fragment boosts the speed of Tom when on storm. That's probably the least useful of them all. Nanook's token is actually the bell, which is resists the cold. So I guess that's good. Like Protagonist, not the most useful. And then we have Epos's token being the Talon, which actually, in my opinion, is the most useful. Being able to heal beasts, heal wounds on beasts, on humans, on animals, so on and so forth. It does have a limited power, but it can heal wounds, which I think is actually one of the most useful things, because how many times do they get injured? Multiple. So the Phoenix Talon does come into play a lot and helps out a lot. But with Series 1 as a total, as a start to this series, I'm going to say it is a fantastic start. It establishes great characters, has a great story, and sets the standard for what this series is going to bring. And with that, that's all for this time. If you like what you saw, leave a like, leave a comment, don't forget to subscribe, press the notification bell down in the corner below. If I missed any aspects, please mention so in the comments. And with that being said, I'll see you next time.